Hey everybody, welcome back to Crafty Chat. Joining us today is Julie Ebersole, who blogs at papertruffles.com. Julie has been stamping for about 20 years. She is an accomplished stamp and die designer, and a lot of you know her as the queen of clean and simple stamping. Today, Julie's going to talk to us about exactly that, how to keep things simple. Your favorite, Julie Ebersole from Paper Truffles. Hey, Julie.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Julie, and also where people can find you on the internet.
Well, let's see. I started stamping about 25 years ago when my cousin would send me handmade cards. So that's how I got hooked on it, and so I blame her. And so I never get tired of making cards and rubber stamping, so that's just kind of my thing. And let's see, you can find me on the web at papertruffles.com. That's Paper Truffles with a Z, not an S. And I don't know why I chose that blog name, but it was many years ago, and I just haven't wanted to change it because it's kind of, everybody knows it now. So I've left it the way it is. And, I'm on Twitter, but I think I'm Julie HRR because my original, when I first started stamping, I was like, we all had to have nicknames, it was a big deal to have a nickname, and so I decided to go with Her Royal Rubberness because at the time of all my buddies, I had the most stamps and everything, and so they were like, oh, you got the most stamps, and so I was like, all right, Her Royal Rubberness, but people often think that's human resources. So,
oh, that's not nearly as much fun.
So when they see that, on Twitter, they think I'm in charge of human resources somewhere. No, it's a long story, and I don't know how to change it, or change it back, because I don't think anybody does the nickname stuff anymore. But and then I have a Facebook page with Paper Truffles, as I share my blog stuff there too, so I just kind of push everything out. And I'm on Instagram, but that's my personal account, and I share some of my my creations there. And a lot of times family, especially my granddaughter. I love sharing pictures of my granddaughter.
She's a cutie.
She's cute. And you also have a lot over on Ellen Hudson's site too, because you designed some great products for her.
Yes, I do some of that too. Oh yeah.
I know you remember.
I've got so much going on, I can't even remember half what I do. So.
Well, that is a good lead-in to what we want to hear from you today, actually, because since all of our lives are so simple and uncomplicated, as I'm sure yours is, we wanted to talk to you about keeping card design simple, because you are the queen of that, of amazing, amazing simple designs. And we want to steal your secrets to what makes a really impactful, simple design.
I think embracing white space. I love white space. I love blank white cardstock. To me, there's just nothing prettier than blank white card space, and I just like to put a focal, I try to stick with a focal image and a greeting, maybe a little bit of a background or a texture to it, but I don't get too crazy, because for me, I have difficulty with anything that involves a lot of layers. I struggle with things that get too messy, and so I'm one of those like oxymorons in the stamping world, because I really don't like getting my hands inky or stuff on them.
No messiness, please.
And I have like massive amounts of baby wipes. I wish I had invented them. I'd be so rich today if I had invented baby wipes.
No.
And I wear an apron, a full body apron when I'm working, because
Really?
Well, hey, I wear an apron because I don't know how many times it's like, oh, I got this on my hands, and I go, ugh. Well, there goes the outfit I was wearing, so I have to put an apron on.
So you're like the June Cleaver of stamping. You're all messied up in an apron when you sit down to make a card.
Oh, yeah. And my mom just made me a really cute apron to wear when I go teach classes. So, and it has a custom pocket for my cell phone and everything in it, so that I stay clean. But you know what it's like when you lean over the table to help somebody, and ink pad right there. Yeah. It's not a good thing. So it's like the apron it'd be my saving grace. So at the end of the day, I don't have, crap all over me. So
So when you're creating, you look like your cards. You're like perfectly kept,
White
perfect,
gloves.
nice.
Well,
white
when
gloves.
when I take off all the protective gear, yes.
She's a safe stamper.
Yeah, totally.
I'm a safe stamper, and it's very like anytime I go to sit down and do anything, I was just like, how messy is that? Am I going to get doing this if I try this? Oh, and I literally go through an agonizing period of time debating how messy do I want to get if I try this. And there are some things that I just won't even like. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. Can't do it.
What's something that you won't do?
What's something I won't do?
Keep it clean, Julie.
I cannot stand smearing anything like stickles with my fingertips.
Oh.
I can't do it. I have to take a piece of cardstock, a little strip of cardstock, and just use it as a little spatula to spread the stickles out. I can't do it with my fingers. I just can't. I don't know why.
Video from Sandy Alma, it was years ago, with her using glitter. And she puts tarps up and wears gloves down to her elbows and classic.
I'm not kidding. It's one of those things. I have an aversion to it, and I just and maybe that's why I tend towards clean and simple designs, because everything is about not getting messy, not getting crap all over. Plus, I have a tendency to get careless and I smear things, and then it's like, dang, I just ruined that card. And so I'm always looking.
You still do techniques. You still manage to do techniques, but in a clean and simple way, which just blows my mind. Because clean and simple is my favorite, hands down, my favorite look. I can't do it because when I do techniques, I get carried away, and before you know it, the whole card is covered with stuff.
But I think what is interesting about that though is I'm really not a technique-oriented crafter. It's more about what is the end result, and am I willing to go through that to get to the end result, and then I'll try it. But if it's just doing a technique for the sake of a technique is very rare for me. It just no. But I like how that looks in the end. Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Got it. Okay.
So.
Well, I always think about in one of the online card classes. You have to tell me which one it was. It had to have been one of the clean and simple classes. You did the faux ceramic tile technique or whatever.
Oh,
remember you embossed and you did die cutting. I mean, I don't know that there's ever been a more beautiful card in one of our classes. And it was a clean and simple looking card, but that technique was pretty elaborate.
Yeah, it was an elaborate technique for me, and I don't normally go that far. But if I like the look, I just loved how it looked like a faux tile.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I will do this because I love that end result. So I'll try it and try to keep it, without going, by then I just focus on that focal piece, and then everything else is very minimal.
Okay.
Because I'm really tired by the time I get to the end of that. So I'm getting old and I get tired real fast. So.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is some of that a time thing for you? If you're saying, okay, I'm not going to spend an hour making this card, but it still has to look fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of it. Well, I think to some degree, though, sometimes a clean and simple card can take longer than one because you have to really have it thought out in your head where this is going to go, how this is going to balance out this, and so I will agonize sometimes for a long period of time. Okay, where strategically does this need to get placed on the layout, or how can I make this work on this layout? And so sometimes you have to really think out what you're going to do because you can't disguise, you can't hide anything.
Right.
When you do something so minimal, it's all right there. And so you have to really think out how you're going to do things. And I have fallback formulas for this layout. This layout works for me every time, so I'm just going to use it. And despite, whatever the technique is, I just fall back on that layout because I know it's going to work. But, yeah.
But you take a lot of care. One of the things that's cool about the way you do instruction is you take a lot of care on every one of those little elements. So, like, you're the tweezer queen, and you always have that perfect. That was the first time I ever saw anybody use tweezers, was when you did it. But you're so careful about where you put everything. Christina is too. And is that part of keeping it simple, is making sure that those little tiny things are so perfect?
I think so, because you have to keep that visual balance going through the card, and especially if you only have very few elements, if one is off, it just kind of throws the, you can look at it and just go, something's not right. I'm not really sure what it is, but something's not right. And part of it is like, this is just too far over to the left. It's got to be, and it's funny that it's such a small detail, but I can always tell when I look at it, and I'll hold it out and look at it from a distance and go, yeah, that's off. I gotta move that. That's off. And so, and sometimes I'll just I'll lay it down, and I'll walk out of the room and then come back and look at it again to see if I can spot what it is that's off about it. And the tweezers, I'm very clumsy. I mean, if you want to see a master at delicate things, my father is a fly tyer. Like, he ties flies for fishing. And I'm amazed at his big hands and how he can handle delicate things. And me, I'm like knocking a glue bottle over. And so he can't let me anywhere near his fly tying gear because I just make a mess there with the feathers and everything. They're going all over the place. But the tweezers really help me see where I'm putting something without my hands being in the way. So they're just like an extension of my hand, and just can get into those little tiny spots where my fingers just block the view. And that's primarily why I started using them, is my dad would use them when he was tying flies, and I was like, I need me some of those. I got to get some of those.
It's not just any tweezers. They got to be those clampy ones, right?
Well, I have two pairs of tweezers. One is the cross-lock tweezers.
Yeah.
And those are great for gripping the center of twine when you're trying to tie, an intricate little bow, and you can't keep it tight enough, and there's nobody there to put their pinky there for you. So I use those for that kind of thing. And then I have my regular tweezers for just grabbing things quickly and picking them up and putting them where I want them. So it's actually two different kinds of tweezers that I can't live without them.
I keep telling myself I'm going to use them. Every time I watch one of your videos, I say, next time I'm picking up a sequin with tweezers, and then I don't because I'm lazy.
Well, I tell you what, though, the tweezers and the sequins are not always a good mix because they tend to ricochet right out of the tweezers. Yes. And so the quick stick is probably a better tool for sequins, but a lot of times it's like, where did I put that thing? Oh, man, I stuck it somewhere, and I don't know where I put it, so I just grab the tweezers because they're right there. But then I have to deal with sequin ricochet, out of the tweezers, and so the quick stick is probably a better tool for that, because then you can just pick it up and then slide it off with the other end real easy. So,
well, I think the tweezers, the clamping kind of tweezers, I think those are essential with all the delicate word die cuts there are now. Like, if you try to put those down with your hand, you like block your entire card. So by being able to clamp it with the tweezers, you can see a placement so much better. And I think I started doing that because of you.
So Julie, the thing, I've followed you forever, as you know, stalked you from way back when when you were at Split Coast, and your style is pretty consistent.
Yes.
I mean,
is it?
It didn't look like you had to find yourself. It looked like you already knew who you were.
In the early days, though, I used to be I started out as very simple, and then I started getting into all the techniques, and I was trying them all and everything, and then I got to a point where I was like, I can't handle this. I can't handle the messy stuff, and it's okay. Just go back to what your comfort zone is and where you feel is your happy place when you're crafting, and I think everybody has to find their happy place. And the things that just make them, when you're done, you just go, yes, that's what I was going for, And so I kind of came full circle, because if you were to see some of my cards from like 25 years ago, you would just go, Oh my gosh. Because, I put on the layers, and I was doing things like, acrylic paint and doing the I think now the jelly prints, are in the altered art world and stuff like that. And I'd make textures and stuff like that, my own faux marble paper and the shaving cream stuff with the dye re-inkers and all that crap. Yeah.
Jennifer's dying because she knows she's done it.
No,
No?
I haven't. I've never done a jelly. What is it called? Jelly print?
Yeah,
I
those
didn't
jelly
know
prints.
you did.
And I get a lot of emails of people asking me to try them, but I know it won't work for me. Like mixed media stuff, I love these art journals that people do. And people ask when I'm going to start doing them. I know it's not my happy place.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a long time to get to that point and be okay with that. I think it's gorgeous, like what Nicole McGork can do with those dolls, like that journal, stunning. But I just know that mine wouldn't look stunning, and I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I would sticking with the things that I normally do. I'll try new things, but I don't know. I think you get to a point where you can see something new and kind of have a feeling if it would work for you or not. Like the watercolor powders. That one I wasn't really sure if I liked it or not, so I just decided to try it, and I like it in small doses. So I don't know. I think sometimes it's fun to try some things that you don't think you would like, but normally I think it's good to stay in your happy place. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I never tried whipped cream and reinkers.
Whipped cream.
Yeah.
Whipped cream. I thought it was shaving cream.
Oh, sorry, shaving cream. Whipped cream would taste better. Or like the nail polish stuff. I've never tried that.
It's funny because there was a time when people were doing they were taking evaporated milk or condensed milk, and they were torching it and everything to do that, and it's like, hello, you're going to attract all kind of insects. Why would you do that?
Trying to do?
Oh,
Well, you know what,
the background stuff, and I really don't know, but I was like, I tried it once, and I was like, this is just not worth the mess and the stickiness and bugs and.
Well, I was once on what was the PBS show? Was it Carol Duvall? I don't remember. Isn't this terrible? I don't remember what the show was. But they told me, it was like towards the end of the run of the show, and they told me I needed to do a stamping technique that was never done on the show.
Yikes, that's a tall order.
And I couldn't come up with anything, so they asked me to do stamping with lemonade, stamping with evaporated milk, and there was one other thing, and I had to do it, and it looked kind of cool, but I never did it again. But I've seen people do cool things with it. It just made me thirsty.
Next thing I'm going to stamp with some Dr. Pepper and some Mountain Dew.
No, I'm stamping with bacon.
Do something with toothpaste.
Yeah.
Toothpaste. No, They were doing stuff with toothpaste. Make your own embossing paste with toothpaste or something like that. And I'm just like, why?
People are creative.
I think it's places where it's really, really cold in the winter, and they're trapped inside with their toothpaste and their evaporated milk, but they're creative people. So they're saying, I can stamp with this.
Good for them.
I know that necessity is often necessity is the mother of invention, and there have been times when you'll do something because you got no other recourse.
When times get tough, you're breaking out the toothpaste instead of the embossing paste.
There you go.
It's stamping world problems, right?
Exactly.
Too funny. So, Julie, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, I have discovered over the last couple years or so that the more I do simple cards or things like that, I have more white cardstock than any other color imaginable. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, I buy it by the ream because I go through so much of it, and I have very, my quantities of colored cardstock are shrinking.
Yeah.
Same here.
Quite a bit, because I just really find that I gravitate towards white, and part of it too, I think, is just the fact that something resonated with me when one of the online classes, something Debbie Hughes said about how her style had evolved to where it was, and I think she and I are kind of on that same wavelength in that, you walk into a store, like I would walk into Papyrus and gaze at the cards, and I would just be like, oh, I walk into a letterpress shop, and I'm just like in heaven over the letterpress. And I think what resonated with me is that it's an expanse of white cardstock, lots of white space, and then that pop of color or the graphic image that really speaks to you and kind of takes the center stage on the card. And that's kind of like, I want that same feeling when I make a card. I want it to feel like something that you'd walk into a boutique and see that, in a fine stationery shop, and like, oh, I love that look. And so I think that's kind of what inspires a lot of what I do, is I'm always trying to achieve that type of effect that I get when I make something, that I get when I walk into a stationery store and see a beautiful, letterpress card. I wish I had a letterpress, but I've got no place to put one. So. And
you're very successful in bringing that look to it, because I remember back in the day, I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of the main reasons why I started a blog was because I started following your blog, Julie. And I was like, I love her to death. So if you go back to like late 2005, early 2006, I was probably leaving comments on your blog. And, and then like 6 months later, I'm like, I could maybe have a blog. And so I started my blog.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
I didn't know that. That's exciting.
The thing about blogging, I just started it to kind of chronicle my growth and just kind of like, okay, so this is where I'm at right now, and I don't know where I'm going to go, but this is where I'm going to chronicle where I go with all this stuff. And so I have to admit that for me, blogging is one of those things that sometimes it's so time-consuming to write up everything and make sure you've cited your materials and everything so people know what you used, and it can get kind of exhausting trying to keep up, a regular pace with it. And there are times when, like this summer, I just took some time away from it because I needed to have a break where I didn't feel, this a deadline hanging over me where I had to blog something. I was like, no, I'm just, if I got something to say or something to share, then I'll blog it, and if not, I'm just going to let it go and not worry too much about it, and keep it fun for me, because that's how, when I started it, the whole purpose was just keeping it fun for me. So, but that's funny to see how it's all gone. I mean, the whole thing when blogs started, I remember when I first started, there was another gal who started hers, and I'm trying to remember her name, Michelle Laycock, I think, from Split Coast, and I think she had the very first stamping blog ever in the history of the world. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I was like, okay, I'll try it, just see what happens. Oh, this is kind of fun. And then before you knew it, I mean, just blogging in itself, no matter what topic, just all of a sudden, bam, it just exploded. And now it's like, holy crow, there's just so many out there. You can't keep up with everybody. Everybody's doing amazing things. And
so when did you start yours?
I'd have to go back and look, but I think it's like 2005 or...
I must have started following you soon after.
Yeah, it might have been 2005. I have to go back and look at my archives, but... yeah, and it was like really sad. I didn't know how to make a banner or anything like that. I just...
That was such a foreign world back then.
I know. It's like, wow, I know how to use Photoshop now. Woohoo!
Even going farther back into the depths of the history of the internet, I know I've told Jennifer this in the past, but I used to do blogging when it was not called blogging. It was called online journaling.
Oh,
yeah. And it was like, you didn't even have like WordPress or movable type or typepad or anything. It was like, I'm going to code this HTML, and then I'm going to have it linked to this other page. Like back in the day. So.
That's why when you started your blog, you were such like a prodigy, and you already had everything all perfect and squared away.
Since I was like 17. So
wow.
Yeah. And what's funny to me about this is that you are the youngest of all of us by a significant amount, yet you are like, you've been doing the blogging the longest.
Well,
she's always going to be more tech savvy than us older chicks, you know, because she's younger. She has the she has, this is part of her life history, whereas for us,
Yeah.
you know, like, I remember those covered wagons, you know. And
I remember when one of my engineering professors said to our class, you need to do this homework and turn it in, but you also have to email me the answers. And we're like, we have to email? We have to go to the library and we have to log in and email? I'm going to quit this class. This is too much.
Yeah, and the modem sound. Those were dark days.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember when just begging for an email. Ooh, I want to get my first email.
Yeah.
And now
you're begging
I'm
for
like,
snail mail, right?
now I'm like, the prettiest site in the world is inbox 0.
Yeah.
0.
Well, you know what?
You get there.
Mel brought us one of the best Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks movies of all time.
This is true.
You've Got Mail. I love this movie. My mom and I quote it every Thanksgiving. We always say, Happy Thanksgiving back, all the time, because, and if you know the movie, you know what scene I'm talking about, and how the girl who's Callie from Grey's Anatomy, like the first time I ever saw her. So, yes, we quote that, and we quote, around this time, well, we're filming this in August, and so it makes you think of the scene when he says he wants to send her a bouquet of newly sharpened pencils.
Yeah.
School is starting. Things like that. So anyway, emails, yes, brought us You've Got Mail from the lovely Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
Oh yeah, that's
And none
a
of us
classic.
would know each other without these blogs and email and
Oh no.
And that's the coolest part of it, I think, is, and especially with, you know, like y'all, I think, you know, like Christina being on your blog for a long time before you ever knew each other in real life, just kind of being a fan. Those stories are so fun to hear.
And Lydia bought my first ever digital, like, SLR camera from
I
me
did.
back in the day. I had to mail it off to you.
That was so fun. I was like, it was like when I opened the box, that light came out of it, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, like all that Christina Werner magic.
Oh,
And then I met
yeah.
you at CHA a couple of years later, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now
Cool.
I know you're real, not just a figment of my imagination.
Well, you know, it probably was this big, like, 85-year-old gentleman pretending to be a young woman on the internet.
I have another question for you, Julie. Speaking of gentlemen, so I was talking to a friend of mine today. I showed him a card that I made, and he's a stamper, and he was terrified of this card because there's so much white space, because I love white space, and I'm the same way as you. I like the little, just brilliant pop of color. That's my favorite. But it scared him to death. So what do you tell people who are scared of the white space? How do you make them comfortable designing in that space if it terrifies them?
Embrace the white space.
That, you know, yeah, I'm just, that's a real, I'm just going to have to
Well, I think
ponder that,
people
because
don't know where to put the white space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big
I think kind of what you have to find, you know, the biggest key for me when I'm, you know, looking at the white space is like, okay, what is my focal point? I find what my focal point is. What do I want to anchor things with? How do I want to create that visual triangle? And so I always talk about, especially when I'm teaching in a class, I try to talk about, you know, your eye wants to move naturally around that space, and it's odd numbers really help. So if you have 3 elements, you know, that you're working with, that really helps. So narrow it down to 3. Keep your color choices. You know, if you have a hard time with color, go on Pinterest and look for a color scheme. You know, I have a terrible time with color. I have to go find something on Pinterest that shows me these colors look good together. And I can try color wheels, but color wheels, I'm like, okay, this color wheel is telling me that these colors work well together, and I get that, but I don't like that combination, even if it does go together. So I like to go onto Pinterest and look for something that does look pretty to my eye, and then I just sit there and go, okay, narrow it down to these colors, and then what is my visual triangle here? I got my focal here. I need the eye to kind of drift down this way and then this way, and lead me to the inside of the card. And so I'm always kind of going for which way does this card open, and how can I get that triangular effect that leads me to the inside of the card, and it feels natural when it flows. And as long as you have some combinations of layouts that you know will work every time, then stick to them. Don't worry that it's repetitive, because eventually that becomes habit, and that's not a bad thing. And you're not fighting so much with, how to pull together this magnificent card. Sometimes, there's a big, you're trying to come up with this just amazing, blow their minds, and it's really, you put all that pressure on yourself to do that. And really what you need to do is just, what makes the eye happy going around the page. Look for odd numbers, keep your color scheme, pick something that makes your eye happy, and there you go. Don't get carried away by. And the other thing I also talk about too is, before you add that one more thing, take a step back, walk away, and then come back and see if it still feels like it needs one more thing. Because sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And less is usually more.
And I think part of the fear is exactly what you said, is that people, I know it's intimidating for me sometimes, even when I have a adorable focal image. Part of the scary thing is I want to wow everybody. I want this to be a wow card, when in reality I can let the image, or I can let the sentiment do that for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. I was going to mention that one thing that's, going back to becoming comfortable with that much white space, sometimes you need to expand your visual vocabulary. So to Julie's point, she would go into stationery stores and see lots of things with lots of white space. Maybe go for a search online for cards or stationery or just other items that have a lot of white space, and really see a lot of it. Figure out what ones you like, what ones feel right to you, things like that. Because once you expand that visual vocabulary of things with lots of white space, then you'll be able to use that more effectively in your own art and crafting.
Yeah.
That is great advice. Yeah, the things that you're drawn to already, what makes them tick.
I think sometimes, too, it's like sometimes I'll just go downtown. We have I'm lucky to live in a spot where we have lots of quaint little shops. And it's fun to just stand outside the window and look at the window display. Sometimes just looking at those kinds of things that aren't necessarily stationery related or card related can sometimes all of a sudden help you see something that you might not otherwise if you just stare at stationery or card after card after card after card. And sometimes when I get locked into something, I have to go break that by going and just looking at shop windows or something like that, or art in a gallery in one of the downtown shops. That kind of gets me out of that, tunnel, I guess.
But I like hearing that you have a few layouts that you kind of find yourself going back to. I've been getting stuck a lot over the past few months, and one of the things that I found really has helped me is to go look at my blog, and I'll randomly pick a month. My blog's I think 6 years old, so I'll go like 3 years ago, and I'll just flip through them. And I'll find a card of mine that I think is like the layout's okay or whatever, and I'll kind of copy myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I
definitely.
Kind of the same thing, and it really saves me a lot of time whenever I do that, because I'm not having to reinvent the wheel. And you talked about feeling like having to let go of the feeling that you have to wow everybody. What I found helped for me is I'm not having to wow everybody. I'm having to wow the one person who opens up this card. And I'm hoping that by just having thought of them and sent them a card, they're kind of happy, so it's like they're easy to impress because they're just happy to be getting some happy mail. So that really helps me let go of that feeling a need to wow, because really it's all about that person you're giving the card to.
Exactly. Yep.
So
probably, I would say the best card designs I've ever come up with were things that I specifically intended that card for that person.
Yep.
And that ended up being that is almost in every case my best designs.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones where I'm just kind of generally, they just don't ever seem to have that, they don't impress me.
It doesn't have a connection to anything.
I don't have a connection for for a person. So I always do better when I I'm making this for that person, and this will have significance particularly for them, and that's when it really. That's when I really feel like, wow, I really nailed it,
That's amazing. I've never looked at my stuff that way. I'm going to have to go back and do that because I know the cards where I've, made them specifically for a person or an occasion. That is a great tip because maybe you just let go of the mechanics at that point.
Yeah, you do. And you focus on the intended overall feeling that you want that person to get when they open the card, and then that kind of suspends everything else. And for me anyway, it just allows me to then just this is exactly what I'm going to do, and I know, she will get it. She will.
Mm-hmm. And chances are they're not going to care what technique.
Right.
Or that you broke out some condensed milk.
No. And that there are flies stuck to it.
I'm going to have to try to find those old cards that I did with condensed milk and see.
Yeah,
those were long before I had a blog, so I don't think I have them. It was for Hero Art, so maybe I'll ask.
I still don't get it. What could you even do with condensed milk?
You stamp it, and then you heat it with the heat gun, and it kind of caramelizes it and becomes kind of. It actually looks pretty cool. I didn't know that it would hold.
You're creating creme brulee on a card.
Yes.
Why don't we just cook creme brulee and eat it?
Well, you don't use condensed milk. You use evaporated
milk. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Evaporated milk. I'm like, condensed milk, that's really
Sorry. Sorry.
That's how you get ants in your crafter.
It has to do, the one that has the sugar in it was the one that they were like, that's the one you have to use.
Oh, it wasn't lemonade. It was Kool-Aid that I did stamping with. It was
Kool-Aid.
Kind of name the paper then.
And then I remember do the shooting a million times because I would call it Kool-Aid, and I wasn't allowed to call it Kool-Aid. I had to call it a colored powdered drink.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Hey, Julie, where do you start your designs? Do you start your design with a stamp image, or do you start with color, or do you, what lights the fire initially when you sit down to make a card? I always start with a stamp image. I can't start with a sketch or a color or anything else. I have to start with an image.
I really can't start with a sketch. I have a terrible time starting with sketches. I don't know why. But I usually just start, like I said, especially if I have somebody in mind, then I know exactly what image I want to incorporate into it. From there, I'll sit there and go, okay, now I got to pick out a color scheme, and then I got to pick out a layout. And sometimes this backfires on me because I'll be like, oh, shoot, I don't have any. I wanted to use washi tape here, and I don't have any washi tape that matches the color scheme. And so sometimes it helps to have your color scheme picked out first, and then work. But a lot of times I work backwards. Like, what is my intended end result floating around here in my head? Okay, work backwards. What image do I need to pull that off? What kind of background paper would I need to pull that off? What kind of washi tape would work well? What kind of embellishment would, and sometimes I just spread it all out on the table, and then I go, okay, yeah, that, get rid of it, that, get rid of it, that, get rid of it. No, and then I narrow it down to those elements, and it's like, okay, so this is what I'm going to stick with, and now let's put it together.
Are you sitting down in your room when you design, or are you designing on a walk in your head?
It could be anywhere, although a lot of times I find really good ideas will come to me when I'm eating.
That's dangerous.
And so it's really bad because, like, if I'll be in a restaurant, I'll go, oh, this would be such a good idea, and then of course I'm nowhere near my stuff, and so I've got to grab the napkins or the placemat and scribble out, really quickly this idea so I don't forget it, and then I come home and and try to, like, okay, now when I had that inspiration, well, let's get some more food and see if we can get it to come back. And so, but it's weird.
Everything planned out before you start your card, like you have all the elements planned out, or do you start and then kind of wing it from there?
It depends. Like, I have to say that I'm not consistent. There are times when I'm like, I know exactly everything, and I've narrowed it down, and this is it. This is how we're going to roll, and then I'll get midway through it and go, this is not working, and then I have to I can't make it do what the end result I wanted with what I'm using, and I've got to scrap that and let it go. And that's kind of sometimes where I feel that I'm just kind of winging it and flying by the seat of my pants, and sometimes I will start out that way, but a lot of times when I do start out that way, I kind of sit there and I just oh, I don't know what I want to, I don't know, I just don't know. So I try to have some kind of a finished idea in my head to start with, but it doesn't always go the way it planned. You can have a sketch, and it's like, okay, I want to do this big butterfly, and this is kind of where I've got the layout, and I want the butterfly here, and I want, and then, oh, yeah, that looks ugly. That is ugly. And so I scrap it, and well, we all make ugly stuff, right?
Oh, yes,
you sit there and you're just like, that circular file.
Yep.
Off it goes, and I got a big whole can I empty every day where I go, that just didn't work. That didn't work. I tried it.
So you'll throw it away?
Yes, because for me, every time I save something to try to, there are times when I can salvage it. If I can see an easy fix, I'll do it. But if I'm like, you know what, I'm going to spend more time trying to salvage this than is worth, I'm just going to start from scratch. Just toss it, because in the end, ultimately, it's only paper.
Yep.
So what do you do when you get stuck? Like, you have deadlines. Obviously, you work for Ellen Hudson. So when you get stuck on things and the inspiration's not coming, you've already eaten your lunch for the day and nothing came up when you were eating, what do you do? How do you get past that?
Well, sometimes, golly, yeah, I'll go on Pinterest and look for things. Like, I have a board called Sparks Me, and I go and take a look at stuff that I have collected there, and it's just random stuff that just like, that was so pretty. I just love that, so I'm just going to put that in my Sparks Me file.
So is that a public board that we can all go be inspired by?
Oh, yeah, you can go. I mean, and there's all kinds of stuff there, from, lettering stuff that I've seen to paintings, what do you call it? Surface, texture, textile patterns. Sometimes it's, just a place, or a piece of how a room is decorated with the furniture, and I'm looking at the way the flowers are in the vase on that coffee table, and I love that color scheme. So I have a board that's just color schemes, but I have this, Sparks Me board just for random anything that just, I think that was pretty, and so I just stick it there, and then I can just go and skim through it and say, oh, yeah, okay, that's going to start getting some things going. So a lot of times it just helps to just look at, like gardening magazines or home interior or fashion, really good fashion magazines, that catalogs.
I find travel magazines, a lot of times travel magazines have really well-designed ads, and they use white space well, because usually there's some phenomenal photo and they don't want to take away from that. So they really do a good job with white space. And when I used to scrapbook, that would help me out a lot, because I struggled with white space on a scrapbook page, and you really need to have it. So I would look at ads in travel magazines, and it was very helpful. And then I just want to go on a trip. It's kind of like inspiration while eating. It can be dangerous.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, I eat seafood, and I have weird dreams at night. I don't know if seafood affects other people that way, but anytime I eat seafood, I have the most bizarre dreams at night. So there has to be some connection for this and food.
Yeah.
That something goes on. I don't know what, but
it's chemistry.
Maybe you missed your calling. You were supposed to be a chef.
Yeah. I don't know. I hate to cook.
Never mind. You did not miss your calling.
Do you have other hobbies, Julie, besides stamping? Are you a quilter? Are you a gardener?
I tried to do a lot of different things. I tried to do don't laugh, but for a while I was into porcelain painting, like painting florals on china plates, and you'd have to fire it. You do the layer, and then you'd have to fire it. And then I'd have to go back for my next lesson. So it would be a week in between each firing to see as a project was developing. And I kind of gave up on that because I'm much more of an instant gratification girl. And the idea that it could be a month before this plate would be finished because I had to go back each week to have it fired and see the layering. But I tried that. And then I tried other just kind of, little artsy, craftsy things that were just, fun, like making little animals out of felt and stuff like that. And I used to crochet and stuff like that. But none of it really grabbed me like working with paper does. And so that's pretty much my creative interest. I wish I could do things like home decor, but for me, the canvas of a house is hugely terrifying. I'm used to working on a scale like this, and that's my comfort zone. And so my husband is baffled when he's like, why don't you want to decorate the house? And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So a lot of my walls are blank because I seriously need help with that. So my daughter's really good at it. She does not really care to do a lot of stamping herself, but she can decorate wonderfully. So I'm like, okay, I need her. She's my big canvas girl.
She needs to be a model. Your daughter should be a model. She's probably one of the most stunning people I've ever.
She is beautiful.
Seen. She's gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did good.
Thank you. Yeah, I made that.
Yeah. Thank you.
See, that's a big canvas. You did just fine.
Yep.
All right, Julie. Well, I think we are at the end of our time today. Thank you so much. It's always so much fun talking to you. I don't care what your family says. I love your chuckle.
Yes, I do too.
It's one of my favorite things about watching your videos is your little cackle.
My cackle. There you go.
One of Julie's hobbies is giggling.
Yes.
That could be a hobby.
And it's even better in person.
I do love to laugh. So I just find that kind of helps, especially, you got to laugh at yourself because sometimes, you just need to. Can't take life so seriously that you don't have fun with what you're doing. So.
And we can't just let everybody else laugh at us.
No.
Yeah. Beat them to it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Love you, girls. It was awesome. Thank you. Mwah.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.